All right, so we are located in Cornwall, Ontario, which is on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee people. We actually work really closely with the Akwesasne community and specifically the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne. They have an environment program and we collaborate on a lot of our research with them and our project that we've been working on with Ocean School is also a collaboration with them. So we just want to acknowledge them and appreciate all of their efforts and their care for the land. And so a little bit about the River Institute as well. So we kind of have three core pillars, which is research. So we're doing research on everything related to the river ecosystem, from the fish in the water up to things like bats. One of my supervisors is a bat biologist, and I know a lot of people don't always expect that to be something that we look at, but we look at a really wide variety of things. And then we do outreach and education related to all of the research that we do. So our education programs and our outreach programs are taught by scientists. We have scientists going out into the community, showing what we do, teaching how you can do it, and answering questions. And our community is really invested, which is super nice and makes our jobs very easy and a lot of fun. So that's a little bit about us. And then I'll let Kate take it away with some fun info about nature journaling.
Thanks, Lexi. So I've done quite a few community workshops at this point about nature journaling. They tend to be geared more towards younger kids because it's a very accessible and easy to do activity for younger children, but it can be applied to people of any age, basically. I keep a nature journal still to this day. This is probably I think my fifth or sixth nature journal that I've been keeping. So it's just a really nice habit to get into, and it helps you track your observations, whether it be things based on the natural world or even just goings on in your daily life, and can help you track changes over time. So it's really nice to keep kind of that daily diary of things that you see. So we can go to the next slide there. So recording observations, basically the core reason for keeping a nature journal would be to record observations of the natural world, which is not only important for things that we do here at the Institute, like the research that I do on fish. It's very important to keep clear and detailed record of the things that we see, but it can also be a great mindfulness exercise. So really helping you focus on what's happening around you in the moment, kind of forgetting everything else that's going on and just focusing on one thing at a time and making sure that you're focused in and really keeping track of what's going on. It's a great way to keep your memory sharp. So I can think back to records that I've made years and years ago. Oh, I saw this bug here. I wonder if I can still find it if I was to go out and look for it again. So keeping your memory sharp is a great memory tool. It promotes good organizational skills. So not only how to organize the different information that you keep, but summarizing those clearly. So yes, you can go out and observe something, but can you clearly record it? And if you were to clearly record it, could someone read your observation and be able to go out and see it themselves? So being able to transfer that knowledge is really important and a really good practice in keeping a nature journal. And it's a good opportunity to pose questions. So to form a hypothesis and then approach that, maybe even making it into a project one day, something that you see and you're interested in, and then you can further research it after observing it for the first time. So we can go to the next slide. So what to include in a nature journal? So this could be, it could be super detailed, it could be super simple. I always like to say, whenever I give people the example of my nature journal, which tends to be very detailed and very busy looking, it does not have to be that complicated. It can be very simple: when, where, who, how questions that you can include. So date and time. Location can be as simple as your street address. I was at home, let's say. It can be as simple as that, or it could be very specific GPS coordinates. It can be nearest street addresses, a very specific log that is, say, 100 paces from this trail that you hike. I give there like 12 feet up in a maple tree. So these are things that you can include for the location of your observations. And then who, it's always important to include that we want everyone to adventure with a buddy or in a group. And they might record things that you don't. So it's important to list who might have recorded those observations with you. We always include that in our FINS data sheets. to kind of just add an added like confidence level, if you know what I mean. So we can actually communicate these results with different people within the team. So the what is the meat and potatoes of your nature journal. So things like the weather, was it cool and cloudy? Do you have temperature measurements? Do you have cloud cover measurements? Things like that that are a little bit more complicated can be good to include if you're doing, let's say, a herpetology project where the activity of the animals really depends on the weather. And then what were you doing? Were you passively observing something on your way to school? Were you actually going out and hiking and looking for something under rocks? Including those activities is important in understanding why you made those observations. And then, as we're going to get into a little bit later in the presentation, specific measurements. So things like dissolved oxygen of the water, the length of a creature that you saw, approximate sizes or colors, anything like that can be good to include and are very kind of easy and accessible observations for people when they have a nature journal. So we can go to the next slide. So why are these observations important? You know, some people, they just say, oh, well, why would I take the time to do this? It's a nice way to kind of organize your thoughts. These observations that you make could help you answer questions down the line. If you have, say, a family member and they say, I saw a turtle on my road yesterday. What kind of turtle was it? And maybe you have records of turtles in your area that you can refer to and let people know. You can help researchers. So through programs or apps like iNaturalist, some institutes like ours or organizations have citizen science projects where you can communicate your own observations to them. And it can actually be very helpful in expanding the ranges or the known ranges of some animals in your area. It can be very, very helpful. So I know we have a couple of citizen science projects that we really rely on for generating that data. So helping research is a big part of recording those observations. And then, of course, documenting changes. So as I mentioned before, I've been keeping nature journals since I was probably about 13 or 14, let's say, and documenting those changes throughout that time has been very, very interesting. And that's one of the goals of a few of our research projects here at the Institute is that long-term monitoring. So if you can get people started early recording their observations, it's a really great way to keep track of those changes. So go to the next slide, please. And examples. So I actually forgot my nice nature journals that have these detailed sketches and stuff, but I do have my current nature journal, which includes like printouts of maps. So very simple things there. On top of printouts, you can also do maps that are drawn in. So again, I don't know how clear it is. Just little maps that are drawn in. Got some printed out photos of animals that I've observed and their habitat. What else we got here? Comparisons and questions that I had about species in my area that I wasn't sure about, and I was able to go online and research it. So that's a great way to kind of prompt kids to ask a question and then follow it up with research that they'll do on their own. I don't think I have any sketches in here, but people are always like, oh, I can't draw, I won't be able to do a sketch. You can draw a circle with a line through it, and if that means something to you and you're able to clearly explain it, that's all that you need to do. So it doesn't have to be that difficult. It can be very simple. So yeah, that's my example of a nature journal.
I also just wanted to throw in here that Kate has some insanely excellent ID skills for things, which I'm sure in part comes from her very detailed nature journaling and doing it for so long. I'm in Florida right now visiting my parents, and I've been sending her pictures of the cool animals I see, and I'm like, do you know what this is? And she's been able to help me figure out a bunch of stuff that I wasn't familiar with. So it's a really cool like skill building thing too, I think.
Thanks, Lexy. Yeah, it's like one of those memory games, you know, like, oh, I know I've seen this before, and you can kind of flip back and find it. So yeah, it's great to make connections.
Just for all the teachers out there too, we're going to show you an activity that takes you step by step doing this with your class. So we'll get to that closer to the end. Do you want me to go back to the slide deck?
Please.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's all good for me.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to be talking to you guys a little bit about water quality. So this is one of the programs that I taught for 4 years at the River Institute. And I really think it's something that you can adapt to all grade levels, which is really helpful. So if we want to go to the next slide. So I'm going to go through with you guys the importance of water quality, what factors affect water quality, how we can monitor it, and then what can we do to improve water quality. So the importance, these are a few of the kind of facts that I usually share when I'm presenting this to a class. So less than 2% of water on the planet is fresh water, less than 1% of fresh water is accessible to us. The Great Lakes, which is connected to the St. Lawrence River where we are, contain almost a quarter of the fresh water on the planet, and living things rely on clean water to survive. I know the teachers in this presentation are from quite a wide geographic spread. So the key thing here is that this can be really adaptable to wherever you are. You can pick a different body of water near you. You can pick facts about if you're on the ocean acidification and how that might be impacting populations. But I always like to start with this kind of draw in the students, because a lot of the time, especially where we are on the river, they're like, oh, why should I, turn the tap off when I brush my teeth, saving water? Look at all the water that's right outside. So it's really about making those connections to why water is important, and giving them a few quick, exciting things to draw them in. So you can go to the next slide. So there are so many factors that you can look at when you're looking at water quality. Dissolved oxygen was one that Kate mentioned earlier. So literally just how much oxygen is dissolved in the water. I tried to pull out 4, and one of them being others, I guess, kind of loosely a factor, but 4 that you would be able to measure either with tools or with just observation. So I wanted to try and pick a few that were fairly accessible for everyone. So water clarity, for one, sometimes we call this turbidity, and that's how much light can penetrate through water, which is dependent on how much dissolved solids and like little bits of things are floating around. So usually in places where you have a lot of sediment, or the water is quickly moving and stirring up a lot of sediment, you're going to have less clear water. And when that happens, things like plants that live in the water can get less sunlight. There's less visibility for fish and other animals that live there. So that can affect a lot of different things. The water temperature is a key one. So I'm sure you're all familiar with what temperature is, but this affects lots of things. So whether or not a species can live somewhere is going to be dependent on temperature, because some species have a much narrower range of temperatures that they can live in. But things like spawning also, or migration, are dependent on temperature. So animals rely on the temperature of the water to decide when to do things like spawn or migrate. And if we're seeing temperature changes, then that can affect those species. Depth is another one that can affect a lot of things like spawning. So northern pike is a fish that we have in our area that's really heavily reliant on these kind of like marshy, low depth areas for spawning. One thing I forgot to mention with temperature is that it can also affect other factors. So like dissolved oxygen, colder water can actually hold more oxygen. So that's another way that that can interact with other things. And then other things like plants. So if there's lots of plants, maybe the water is going to be a lot clearer because those plants are filtering out pollutants in the water. Are there lots of animals nearby? Some invertebrates can actually tell us about the quality of the water. Is there garbage in there? What is the bottom of the river made of? So like I said, sediment kind of being mixed up in the water, lots of sediment being in there can affect clarity. So if the bottom is made of really fine sand, that's more likely to happen than if you have a bottom of a river made of larger stones and gravel and cobble. So these are all things that you can easily observe just by looking at, but you can also take some qualitative measurements of. You want to go to the next slide. So this is just kind of an example of how some qualitative measurements might look like if you're observing changes in one place over time. So the water is cloudy versus clear. So I've used a scale of 1 to 5 here, but when we're measuring with the tools that we use, I don't believe there's like a scale. There is like a number that you can use. The closer to 1 it is, the clearer the water is. The higher that number is, the less clear. The temperature you can measure with the thermometer, and then the water depth, if you have a regular ruler or a meter stick or a measuring tape, you could measure the depth of water with all of those things, and then kind of see how things would change from spring to summer or over the course of a month. And those are things that you could record in your nature journal. We want to go to the next slide. So this is an example of a really awesome organization that we partner with and we work with very frequently. We have an absolute ton of their kits on a lending program. They do a lot of work with teachers and classes. And it's a really accessible way to be able to measure water quality. They provide you with all of the tools and the instructions on how to use those tools to record data. And then if you want to jump to the next slide, they have this really awesome app, which is also accessible on their website, where people can go and log the things that they've observed or the measurements that they've recorded. And so you could actually also go to your area, to the body of water that's near you, and look at measurements that other people have recorded or observations that they've made. And you could even compare your own measurements and observations to ones that other people have made if you're trying to have observe changes over a longer period of time. So this is a really cool resource, and we're really love partnering with Water Rangers because they make this really accessible for everyone. You can go to the next slide. So this is just a couple examples I wanted to show you guys of some other ways that you might be observing changes over time without actually having to measure anything. So this is a great example of how you could observe changes in water depth over the course of a season or a year. So maybe at one point in the year, you go to a creek near you and the creek bed is dry and you can see all of the bottom of it. And then maybe the next time that you go back, the walking path next to the creek is actually flooded. So this is one way that you could make sure that you're observing changes without actually having to measure anything. If you want to go to the next slide. I tried to include an oceany example of something similar. So you could look at tides, how far the tides come in that day based on the height of the debris that was deposited. You can even look at what height that the tide goes to the highest level based on that debris, or the lowest level, which is a really helpful way that we monitor changes. Is we call it bank full in a river or a creek, where it's like the highest water levels, which don't happen very often, but that's one way that you can compare the water level to a water level from another time. Even if you haven't seen the water being that high, you can tell how high the water's been previously. So that's another cool way that you can make comparisons. And then if tide pools are full of water or all dried up, that's another thing that you can look for and observe without measuring. And so we have a little practice one. We thought it would be fun for you guys to like take a minute or two to just think of all of the things here that you can observe and record without actually having to measure anything. So I don't know if we want to give everyone a minute to do that. And then we can give some examples of some of the things that we see here.
You guys want to put it in the chat, the things that you're observing?
The water level, how much of the rock is visible? Yeah. And sometimes you can even see like rings of like algae or something too that maybe had like grown on the rock. And if the water level goes below that, you can see where the water used to be. Foliage. Yeah, it is a little small, sorry.
Sorry, oh yeah, Jay's on her phone. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm losing everybody.
The kind of plants that are here, somebody had put foliage is a good one too. So I think that little purple flower in the front is possibly purple loosestrife. It's hard to, I'm not great at plants and it's hard to tell from photos, but that's like an invasive species. So you could potentially record something like that. There's very clearly a beaver lodge in the middle of the water here, so that's another thing that you could record, kind of species that live there. So maybe even if you haven't seen a beaver, there are signs of it having been there, and you can do that for lots of other animals too. It's a cloudless day, it's sunny outside, so there's lots and lots of things that you could record about this site just from looking at it.
I like this idea even for students, like if you're in a classroom and you want to practice with students before going out, like showing some different pictures and making observations together. So it's kind of a low-hanging fruit.
Looks like a fisherman. I feel like Kate, is that you in this photo? I think this is an old Finn's photo, so I'm pretty sure it's Kate in the back there.
Yeah, we were catching turtles that day, I think.
Yeah, so lots of cool stuff. And then Heather has some slides to share about some actions that we can do to help with water quality.
Have a couple minutes left, so I just wanted to share with you. So this activity, this project that you can do with your students, we have this on Ocean School. I'm going to send you guys all these links. So this is actually a brand new video called What's in the Water. So you can watch this video with your students, and it's talking about water quality in the St. Lawrence, and you get to see Lexy and her team monitoring water quality. And then it comes with this activity, this community science project that you can do with your students. So I'm just going to show you a preview here. Maybe I'm going to go to it though. Hang on, so you can see it bigger. So there's a little challenge: become a citizen scientist and monitor the environmental changes in your community over time. So guide students through making observations. Lexi had made this beautiful infographic here of different things that you can observe in the environment. We have a little bit of a guide to gather knowledge from local people who've lived in the community for a long time. So there's a little thing with Kate as well to show you the kind of knowledge you can learn from someone who's been making observations over time. So there's some scaffolding for doing an interview with somebody. There's a little clipboard for it. And then we offer up some different field, some templates for field journals. So there's some different ideas. There's ones where you can, things you can circle. So you could print this off for your students and they could go outside and practice. And then we offer up some places where you can share your data. So just taking it that next step in terms of engaging with the community. So this is available everything's free on Ocean School. So this activity, along with the video, is all free in English and French, and we'll definitely share those out with you. If you are interested in doing this project with your students, we have, I've got you pinned still, Lexi. We still have lots of space for people to sign up to commit to take action in the 2024-2025 school year. We can get you guys some free equipment. So for this project, we'll be offering classes, field journals, and a couple of conductivity meters. So that we hope that will help empower you and your students to go out and make some observations and care for our waterways.